are there some specific benefits that are not so common?
That's a good question. To put it very simply, testosterone is not a panacea, but it is kind of a man's life force, if we're going to put a very simple term on it. Testosterone, in my opinion, one of the main benefits that I've experienced and that I've also seen in my clients is increased resiliency to stress, both physiologically, but also psychologically. And I think when you are more resilient to stress holistically, this allows you to not only live a subjectively much better quality of life, because the things that would bother you or the things that would take you down can bounce off your back a lot easier, but it's also going to shift the trajectory of where you're going to end up, because it's going to impact not only the decisions that you're going to make and what you're disposed to, but also the outcome of how you can handle yourself in any given situation. So testosterone allows you to go through a metamorphosis, and it's kind of like it allows you to go through a second puberty almost. And while it doesn't do the work for you, and I think that's one of the most important things that I've been driving home for a while now, is that it gives you the foundation to become the man that you can be, and emphasis on can, is that you still have to earn that and you still have to go through those processes, but now you will respond properly to those processes. And I think one of the most detrimental outcomes of having hypogonadism for a prolonged period, particularly during development, is that you not only shy away from the things that you probably should be doing in terms of pushing outside your comfort zone, but when you do push outside your comfort zone, because you don't have that biological and psychological buffer towards stress, is that you can become overwhelmed, you can become much more easily traumatized, and then you're going to, by following the natural path of least resistance we all have, you're going to withdraw more, and then that's going to drastically shift who you are, what your values and attitudes are, but also what you can achieve. So if you have to embody and experience a sick, weak body, a geriatric body, and a feeble, weak, and afraid mind, in your 20s and in your 30s, not only is it all downhill from there, but you're also not going to have a very good experience to set yourself up to be able to be a confident man, a capable man, someone who's mastered the skills that you want to master, or become a father if that's what you want to do. So I think it gives you the foundation to live a life that is rewarding and it is satisfying, and ultimately gives you the capacity to live a life that you're happy to live.
But I guess there are still a lot of men who start TRT and who say after a while, well, I don't experience anything. We see it even in the Facebook group. Some just said, well, it didn't do anything for me. I just stopped. And as I read in your excellent work, Beyond TRT, there's much more to it than just testosterone. At what point do you say, well, that's the testosterone part? No, let's explore the other hormones.
Yeah, that's such a good question. And that's where it's very nuanced person to person, because one thing that I really cover on in that book, and thank you for your feedback on that, is that some men will need multiple hormones optimized. And it's very common for hormone deficiencies to occur together, especially if the root cause of the hormone deficiency is age. All the hormones will decline with age over time, and people's hormones will decline at different levels and different paces over the course of their life, and they may not decline together, or they may all decline in quite a linear fashion. But something else that also happens with a lot of younger men is they either throw these hormones that they don't need because they've read about the benefits of XYZ online, and this throws their body out of balance and creates super physiological levels of hormones that may cause them problems like progesterone or downstream metabolites of DHEA. There's a reason that we don't just pump ourselves full of cortisol. I mean, cortisol is the most powerful anti-inflammatory in the world. Why aren't we all pumping our cortisol levels through the roof? Because we know that that's not going to be beneficial. Just, anyone who's taken a high dose of prednisone will tell you that. But the other thing that's really important is that sometimes these other hormones are deficient, particularly, if someone has Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, if someone has, a traumatic brain injury and they've got deficiencies in pregnenolone and DHEA, or sometimes these hormone deficiencies occur as a secondary outcome. So if you've got secondary hypogonadism, if your testosterone is shut down for, being, let's say, obese, alcoholic, metabolic syndrome for a prolonged period of time, particularly during development, then it makes sense with the analogy that when there's smoke, there's fire, and there can also be deficiencies in other hormonal pathways. So I think it is absolutely imperative that men get all their hormones assessed, as well as all their other biological markers assessed, which is why I'm such a big proponent of comprehensive lab work, medical history, complete symptom overview. Like you have to look at this holistically because, and I like to bring back to the analogy of like the movie Cars, where like it's like that Pixar movie where the cars are like characters and they're alive. I think that's a really good way of looking at the human being, is that we are an interconnected series of systems like a machine, but we're also sentient, like we're conscious. And that's complicated because now we're like, well, do you have a biological issue? Do you have a psychological issue? Do you have an issue with your car, or do you suck at driving? Did you crash your car because there was something wrong with the steering wheel, or because you didn't know how to take it around the corner? And that's the role of the practitioner, where they need to get to the bottom of that, because a lot of the time people are trying to fix their biological issues with psychology. And a lot of the time people are trying to fix their psychological issues with biology. Erectile dysfunction is a great example. So if a man has low testosterone, he doesn't have that buffer towards the heightened stressor of vulnerability that comes with intimacy, especially with a new partner. That's normal to feel a bit anxious and a bit, out of your comfort zone. That's totally fine, particularly if you're a young man. But if you don't have that driving testosterone there to facilitate, lust and dopaminergic response to intimacy as well, you're not really going to have that buffer. So you're going to get a much more heightened stress response. You're going to divert blood away from the extremities, and then you're basically going to have a stress response and erectile dysfunction. The body is pulling blood towards the vital organs. So that can be a biological issue, but then you can also have the psychological issue of you get up in your head and you have a repeated failure of performance, or perceived failure of performance. And even with optimal testosterone levels, optimal hormonal parameters, you can still psychologically make that subjective stress response real and produce the same outcome. So a lot of the time when I'm working with my guys, or when I've spoken at conferences or done webinars and spoken about this, is that a lot of the time the psychology can be built on the broken foundation, the broken biology, and we can go in and we can fix the hormone deficiency, we can get the perfect blood work, but now you've got to do that work to undo the psychological damage. I'm not going to say trauma because I think that's overkill, but the psychological programming that might be maladaptive over the top, which was in response to the biology, which we've now fixed. But this is not an overnight thing. We can optimize your hormone levels in 12 weeks if you're lucky, maybe 6 months if there's a bit more work, but it takes a lot more than 6 months to completely change your psychological programming to things. That can take months, that can take years. So I think that doing certain processes like habits or deliberate things, even speaking to a counselor, can help to fast track undoing the psychological damage that comes with hypogonadism. But ultimately, I think guys need to understand that, one, their expectations may be unrealistic. If they're expecting just to inject testosterone and get your testosterone levels optimal and then immediately have the mindset of Giga Chad, like that's just not realistic. But what they also need to understand is that, yes, testosterone may take time to work, but I have another theory, which is that testosterone also requires time to do the work. And that can often be work that people don't want to do because it's vulnerable, it's uncomfortable, it involves getting off your ass. It doesn't involve just doing a shot or taking a pill. And I think guys are drawn towards magic pills because affiliate marketing is very effective. Social media is marketing supplements is very effective, literally selling a magic pill. But a lot of the time, well, actually, in my experience, all the time, those paths all lead to dead ends. And at the end of the day, you just got to basically sack up and do what needs to be done. And I think that once you have the experience of doing this self-development work, both physically and mentally with optimal testosterone levels, I think it's rewarding. I think you get on the roll. I think you get some momentum with it. And I think that that's the powerful thing, is if you can become addicted to self-development rather than addicted to degenerative toxic vices, and you can trade this for that, and you can just do that consistently over time, it's not going to solve all your problems, but it's going to help them. It's going to help all of them.
If you wish to support the channel, consider becoming a channel member. And check out the links in the description of all the things I'm associated with. My ebook on compounded testosterone cream, multiple workout programs, Mizumi skincare, online pharmacy NP labs, and a list of Amazon links to the supplements we recommend.